Ancient builders across the globe left behind the same impossible blueprints. This video explores 25 ancient construction mysteries that point to a shared global knowledge, a forgotten chapter in our collective story. By the end, you will see the map of human history redrawn with connections you never learned in school. How did cultures separated by oceans and millennia build with identical precision? What common thread links a pyramid in Egypt to a temple in Japan? The answers suggest our ancestors were part of a world far more intertwined than we ever imagined. What does it mean for our understanding of human ingenuity when the same architectural secrets appear everywhere? That conventional narrative is a story of separation, a map of human progress drawn with distinct, isolated continents of achievement. We are taught that civilization sparked to life independently in the fertile valleys of the Nile, the Tigris and Euphrates, the Indus, and the Americas. According to this view, the pyramid in Egypt and the pyramid in Mexico are nothing more than a fascinating coincidence, a case of similar solutions to similar problems arrived at by minds that never met. This model of parallel development is the bedrock of mainstream archaeology. Yet, for every rule, there exists a curious exception that refuses to fit neatly into the textbook. When we look closer, the evidence on the ground begins to tell a different, more interconnected story. It is a story written not in isolation, but in a silent, global language of stone. Specific angles of inclination appear in structures oceans apart. Identical astronomical alignments mark sacred sites from one hemisphere to the other. Complex symbols like the spiral or the stepped pyramid motif emerge in cultures separated by thousands of miles and just as many years. These are not vague similarities. They are precise technical echoes. This growing collection of anomalies creates a persistent friction against the idea of purely independent invention. It has led many researchers, from credentialed academics to independent investigators, to reconsider an older idea, diffusionism. This is the concept that knowledge, technology, and even spiritual beliefs could have traveled across vast distances in the ancient world, carried by forgotten explorers, traders, or migrating peoples. A more radical interpretation suggests a primordial mother culture, a single, advanced source civilization lost to time, whose survivors seeded their knowledge across the globe after a great cataclysm. Whether through gradual diffusion or a single catastrophic dispersal, the implication is the same. Our ancestors may have been connected by a web of shared understanding far earlier and more extensively than we have dared to believe. The 25 mysteries we are about to explore are the tangible fingerprints of that possibility. They are the architectural riddles, the engineering enigmas, and the symbolic puzzles that, when placed side by side, begin to form the outline of a global blueprint. This is not about dismissing the incredible ingenuity of individual cultures, but about asking if that ingenuity itself might have sprung from a common, deeper well of knowledge. Let us examine the first and perhaps most iconic piece of this puzzle. High in the thin air of the Peruvian Andes, a fortress wall defies all conventional understanding of ancient construction. At Sacsayhuamán, stones the size of small houses are assembled into a zigzagging rampart. Each block is a unique, irregular polygon, with anywhere from 12 to 32 distinct sides and angles. Yet these colossal puzzle pieces fit together so perfectly that the seams between them have become legendary, often described as being tighter than a razor blade. This is not simple stacking. This is a masterclass in three-dimensional stone fitting, a technique known as Polygonal Masonry. The builders at Sacsayhuamán and at the nearby temple complex of Ollantaytambo did not use mortar. They did not rely on rectangular, uniform blocks. Instead, they chose the most difficult path imaginable, working with granite so hard that modern steel tools struggle to cut it, shaping each stone to interlock with its neighbors in a way that makes the entire structure essentially earthquake-proof. The engineering principle is one of distributed force and mutual locking, a concept that seems incredibly advanced for its time. The immediate mystery is logistical. How did they shape these stones with such precision? How did they transport 100-ton blocks up steep mountainsides? But the deeper, more tantalizing mystery is conceptual. Why choose this method? It requires a profound, intuitive grasp of geometry, stone fracture points, and structural physics. It is a solution of immense elegance and over-engineered perfection. And this specific solution, this fingerprint of polygonal masonry, does not stay isolated in Peru. We find its echo thousands of miles away, in the ancient foundations of a completely different continent, waiting for us to make the connection. That same fingerprint of impossible precision is pressed into the sands of Egypt, while Sacsayhuamán showcases a mastery of organic, interlocking form. The Great Pyramid of Giza represents the absolute zenith of geometric perfection. Its base is a near-perfect square, with sides that vary in length by mere centimeters, a margin of error so small it rivals modern construction projects. But the true wonder is not just in its shape, but in its orientation. The pyramid is aligned to true north with an accuracy of 3/60ths of a single degree. To appreciate what this means, consider that the magnetic North Pole wanders. True north is the fixed axis point of our planet's rotation, and aligning a structure of that scale to it requires profound, sustained astronomical observation. This was not guesswork. It was a calculated, deliberate act of placing a mountain of stone in precise conversation with the cosmos. The logistical scale is equally staggering. The construction involved quarrying, transporting, and positioning an estimated 2.3 million individual blocks, each weighing an average of 2.5 tons, with some interior granite blocks exceeding 50 tons. The engineering questions are endless. How were these blocks lifted and placed with such consistent accuracy? How was the site leveled over 13 acres to create a foundation flat to within a fraction of an inch? For generations, the standard explanation has framed it as a monumental tomb, built with simple tools and immense manpower. Yet, the more we measure, the more this explanation strains under the weight of the data. The precision encoded in its angles and alignments speaks of a technical knowledge, a mathematical and geodetic understanding that mainstream chronology struggles to place in the 26th century before the Common Era. This leads to a pivotal question. Was this knowledge a sudden, brilliant invention unique to the Nile Valley? Or was the Great Pyramid the ultimate expression of a much older, much wider corpus of understanding, a set of rules and principles that builders elsewhere also knew? The pyramid does not stand as an isolated marvel. It stands as a silent stone hypothesis, suggesting that the blueprint for such perfection was already in circulation, waiting for a civilization with the resources to execute it on the grandest possible scale. And if that blueprint was global, we should find its principles scaled down but no less precise in the most unexpected of places. The circle is humanity's oldest and most universal architectural form. From the windswept Salisbury Plain in England to the remote volcanic slopes of Rapa Nui, and deep within the Sahara's past, ancient cultures independently arrived at the same monumental conclusion: to arrange colossal stones in rings and patterns under the open sky. This is our third mystery, the global prevalence of megalithic stone circles. At Stonehenge, the iconic sarsen stones, some weighing over 25 tons, were dragged from quarries nearly 20 miles away. They were then shaped and erected into a complex arrangement that precisely frames the sunrise on the summer solstice and the sunset on the winter solstice. This was not a random arrangement. It was a colossal stone calendar, a permanent marker of the solar cycle, built with a staggering investment of labor and knowledge. On the other side of the world, the massive stone figures called Moai on Rapa Nui or Easter Island are most famous for their towering faces, yet they are not solitary sentinels. Many were originally placed upon vast ceremonial platforms called ahu, which were often arranged in a sweeping curve or semicircle, creating a communal, encircling space facing the village and the sea. While their precise astronomical functions are still studied, the societal impulse to create a circular, communal arena from immense stone is unmistakably similar. Perhaps the most telling example lies in the Egyptian desert at a site called Nabta. Here, over 7,000 years ago, a community erected a circle of smaller standing stones along with aligned megaliths. Researchers have determined that these stones map the positions of key stars, serving as an ancient observatory to mark the coming of the seasonal rains. A stone circle in the heart of Africa predicting the monsoon shares a fundamental purpose with a stone circle in England marking the solstice. The common threads are profound. First, the sheer physical effort moving megaliths, meaning great stones, across daunting landscapes without the wheel or draft animals. Second, the precise astronomical targeting, showing a deep, practical understanding of celestial cycles. Third, the choice of the circle itself, a shape symbolizing unity, eternity, and the cyclical nature of time and the heavens. Why would cultures with no conceivable contact all choose the same incredibly difficult method to express the same celestial understanding? The simplest answer within the traditional framework is convergence, that observing the sky naturally leads to circular metaphors and stone is a durable material. But the specificity is haunting. It points to something more foundational than independent invention. It suggests a shared, primordial recognition that human life was intimately tied to the motions of the cosmos, and that this relationship was so critical, it demanded expression in the most permanent, monumental language available, stone arranged under the stars. This celestial language, however, was not only written on the ground, it was also encoded in the very placement of sacred mountains, creating alignments that stretch across entire continents. While stone circles speak of celestial alignment, another site speaks of raw, incomprehensible power. In Lebanon's Bekaa Valley, the ruins of the Roman temple of Jupiter at Baalbek rest upon a foundation that makes even the Romans look like latecomers. Beneath their elegant columns lies a pre-Roman platform, and within its western wall sit 3 limestone blocks known as the trilithon. Each one of these stones is a behemoth, measuring roughly 64 feet long, 14 feet high, and 12 feet deep. Their weight is staggering, estimated at over 800 tons apiece. To visualize that, imagine 3 fully loaded jumbo jets, carved from a single piece of rock, lifted over 20 feet in the air, and slid into a wall with seams so tight you cannot slip a piece of paper between them. The mystery deepens in a nearby quarry where an even more colossal block lies partially cut from the bedrock. Known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, it weighs an estimated 1,650 tons. This is not just a big stone, it is the largest known worked stone from antiquity, a monument to ambition that was somehow cut but never moved. The questions here are not subtle. Who built this platform, and why did they choose a method of such breathtaking difficulty? The Romans, master engineers themselves, simply built upon this existing titanic foundation, implying it was already ancient in their time. The technical challenge of moving an 800-ton block is orders of magnitude greater than moving an 80-ton block. It is not a linear problem. It is a geometric one involving friction, leverage, and ground pressure that would crush most modern equipment. The standard explanations of ramps, rollers, and immense manpower begin to sound like fairy tales when confronted with this scale. Baalbek does not stand alone in this category of the unimaginably heavy. We find echoes in the foundation stones of Sacsayhuamán, in the 50-ton granite boxes within the Serapeum of Saqqara in Egypt, and in the scattered megaliths of other ancient sites. This pattern suggests something profound. It points not to 1,000 different cultures independently rediscovering basic leverage, but the possibility that a specific, advanced school of megalithic engineering once existed. This would have been a codified knowledge of geology, weight distribution, and vibrational physics that allowed certain builders to manipulate stone as if it were clay. The existence of Baalbek's foundation, a project of almost mythical scale, forces a humbling reconsideration. It asks us if the true peak of ancient construction technology occurred not in the classical age we celebrate, but in a far more distant, forgotten epoch, whose surviving lessons in moving mountains were later applied in smaller form across the separated continents of the world. The ocean floor holds its own silent ruins, challenging the very timeline of human civilization. Off the southern tip of Yonaguni Island in Japan, divers encounter a sight that seems to defy nature itself. Known as the Yonaguni Monument, it is a massive, tiered structure rising from the seabed. Its features are stark and unnervingly geometric, a series of immense terraces with flat, parallel surfaces meeting at sharp, precise right angles. There are what look like wide staircases, straight-edged platforms, and even pillars carved from the solid bedrock. At first glance, it resembles the sunken ruins of a vast ceremonial complex, a forgotten pyramid swallowed by the Pacific. The mainstream geological explanation points to the powerful tidal currents in the area, suggesting the sandstone could have fractured along natural plains, creating these remarkably regular shapes through purely natural erosion. Yet for many who have studied it, the sheer accumulation of perfect angles and repetitive architectural forms in one place strains the limits of that explanation. The central question is profound. Is this a fantastic geological coincidence, or is it the work of human hands from a time when this spot was dry land? If it is artificial, the implications are staggering. Current sea level science suggests this structure would have been above water during the last glacial period, over 10,000 years ago. That places its possible construction in a prehistoric era long before the rise of any known complex culture in Japan. It would imply the existence of a people with the maritime skill to navigate these waters and the engineering prowess to quarry and shape stone on a monumental scale, a society completely absent from the conventional historical record. Yonaguni stands as a ghostly hypothesis on the ocean floor. It whispers of lost chapters, of potential maritime networks that could have connected ancient cultures across the Pacific. If such a network existed, it would have been a highway for ideas, for technologies, and for the very architectural principles we see echoed globally. This mystery prepares us to look elsewhere, to other enigmatic foundations that seem to anchor our history in a deeper, more fluid past. The leap from moving mountains of stone to spanning empty space represents another profound architectural frontier. To build a roof, a doorway, or a grand chamber entirely from stone is to defy gravity itself, and ancient cultures around the world arrived at an identical, elegant solution. This is the Corbeled arch, our sixth shared mystery. The principle is simple in theory yet masterful in execution. Instead of using a curved arch with a central keystone, builders would lay flat stones in horizontal courses, each new layer projecting slightly inward over the one below. Layer by patient layer, the walls would angle inward until they finally met at the top, forming a triangular or beehive-shaped void below. It is architecture as gradual conquest, a slow, steady victory over the empty air. We find this same victory celebrated in vastly different corners of the ancient world. In the jungles of Central America, the Maya constructed the soaring roofs of their inner temple chambers using precise corbelled vaults, creating the dark, resonant spaces essential to their rituals. Across the globe, in Mycenaean Greece, a massive corbelled dome was built for the so-called treasury of Atreus. Its interior is a breathtaking, beehive-shaped chamber of immense stones, a resting place for royalty that has stood for over 3,000 years. The same technique appears in the earliest rock-cut temples of India and in certain subterranean structures of ancient Egypt. In each case, the goal was identical: to create a permanent, stable, and awe-inspiring interior space without the use of a true arch. Now, one could argue that this is simply the logical solution any stone-working culture would eventually discover, and that is precisely what makes it so compelling as evidence for a shared knowledge. It is not just that they all built arches, it is that they all chose this specific, more difficult type of arch for their most sacred architecture. The corbelled vault requires meticulous planning and a deep understanding of load distribution. Each stone must be perfectly positioned to transfer weight down the walls, a static equilibrium that, when done correctly, creates a structure of incredible durability. The recurrence of this specific technical solution, especially in contexts dedicated to the sacred or the eternal, suggests something more meaningful than independent trial and error. It hints at a shared architectural principle, a fundamental rule in the ancient builder's handbook that stated, "For a space meant to last forever and bridge the earthly and the divine, you build inward and upward, stone upon stone, until the space below becomes a testament to patience and precision." This principle of layered ascent may have carried a symbolic weight as well, a physical metaphor for a spiritual journey. Whether that handbook was a tangible set of instructions passed along forgotten trade routes, or a deeper, intuitive understanding of stone and spirit that emerged in similar minds, the global footprint of the corbelled vault marks another point of convergence on our map. And if the principles for building grand interiors were shared, what about the tools used to shape the very stones themselves? The stone at Puma, Punku does not merely obey the builder's hand, it surrenders to it. High on the arid Bolivian Altiplano, this sprawling complex presents a riddle not of scale but of surreal precision. The granite and andesite blocks scattered here are not simply carved, they are fabricated. Their surfaces are flawlessly flat, meeting in razor-sharp 90-degree angles that feel alien to a pre-industrial world. But it is the details that truly defy belief: intricate channels cut with a consistent depth and width, as if by a router bit, and small, perfectly cylindrical drill holes bored into the incredibly hard stone. This is not the work of hammerstones and copper chisels. This is the aesthetic of precision engineering, a quality we associate with machine shops and computer-guided mills. The andesite used here is a brutally hard material, a challenge for modern diamond-tipped tools. Yet at Puma Punku, it appears to have been worked with an ease and consistency that mocks our understanding of Tiwanaku-era technology, which flourished over 1,000 years ago. The blocks themselves are modular, featuring complex geometric interlocking patterns like pieces of a giant, indestructible puzzle. How was this achieved? The mainstream view attributes it to the Tiwanaku culture, yet the technological gap between this stonework and other known Tiwanaku artifacts is vast. This has led to persistent theories about lost methods, perhaps involving specialized abrasive compounds, advanced sawing techniques, or tools that could apply immense controlled pressure. The site feels less like a ruin and more like a discarded factory floor for a technology we can scarcely comprehend. Puma Punku stands as the starkest evidence for a potential global thread of advanced lithic technology. It suggests that somewhere in the deep past, a school of builders mastered the art of making stone behave like a softer, more obedient material. This mastery over hard stone is not an isolated anomaly, it is a signature. And as we will see, this same signature appears on the surfaces of the world's most durable artifacts, where the tools required to make them seem to vanish from the historical record entirely. The signature of Puma Punku is one of impossible precision, but another, more brutal signature is stamped across the ancient world. It is the architecture of giants, of walls built from stones so colossal they seem to belong to myth. This is the eighth mystery, the global language of Cyclopean masonry. The name itself comes from the ancient Greeks, who looked upon the towering, unmortared walls of Mycenae and Turin and could not believe humans built them. They attributed the work to the Cyclopes, a race of one-eyed giants. The technique is deceptively simple in description. Massive, irregular blocks of limestone or other hard stone are roughly shaped and then stacked, with the spaces between them filled by smaller stones. The result is a jigsaw puzzle of monumental scale, a wall with no straight lines or uniform courses, yet one that possesses a terrifying organic strength. The Mycenaean walls are the textbook example, with some individual blocks weighing over 100 tons, fitted together with such cunning that they have withstood millennia of earthquakes and invasions. But here is where the pattern becomes undeniable. Travel to the ancient foundations of Jerusalem to the base of the Temple Mount, and you will find the same style. The stones in the western wall's lowest courses are these characteristic, massive, irregular blocks, clearly older and of a different tradition than the neatly carved stones above them. Journey further to the heart of ancient Anatolia and the Hittite capital of Hattusa. There, amidst the ruins of a mighty empire, stand fortification walls built in the identical Cyclopean style, stones of staggering size fitted together without mortar. And of course, we have already seen its distant cousin in the polygonal walls of Sacsayhuamán in Peru, a more refined but spiritually similar approach to achieving the same goal, immovable strength. This was not the easiest way to build a wall. Quarrying and moving these megaliths required staggering effort. Shaping them to interlock, even roughly, demanded a sophisticated understanding of stone and balance. So why would cultures separated by continents and oceans all choose this specific, back-breaking method? The answer may lie not in shared aesthetics, but in shared necessity and a transferred solution. These are all regions marked by seismic activity, by earthquakes that would shatter a neat wall of uniform bricks. Cyclopean masonry is inherently earthquake-resistant. The irregular locking of the stones allows the entire structure to flex and shift as a single, monolithic unit during tremors, rather than cracking apart. The weight and friction hold everything together. This suggests something profound. The global distribution of Cyclopean walls points less to a shared myth of giants and more to a shared, hard-won knowledge of geoengineering. It implies that this specific, highly effective technique for creating indestructible foundations and fortifications was a piece of practical knowledge that traveled. Perhaps it was carried by itinerant master builders or encoded in the stories of migrating peoples who had learned, through catastrophic loss, how to build structures that could literally stand the test of time and earth. It was a technological heirloom passed across generations and mountains, its principles remembered long after the name of its original inventors was forgotten. This focus on defying seismic forces reveals a deep understanding of the living earth, a knowledge that may have also guided the placement of the world's most enigmatic sites along invisible, energetic lines. Stone can be melted. On remote hilltops across Scotland and parts of Western Europe, the weathered remains of ancient forts hold a secret written in fire. Sections of their stone ramparts are not merely blackened by soot, but fused into a brittle, glassy slag. This is vitrification, a process where silicate rocks are subjected to such intense heat that they begin to flow and then solidify into a crude, natural glass. To achieve this requires a sustained inferno, with temperatures soaring beyond 1,100 degrees Celsius, a heat comparable to a modern industrial furnace or a volcanic event. The existence of these vitrified forts presents a stark and puzzling question. How, and more importantly why, would ancient builders subject their own defensive walls to such an apocalyptic blaze? One theory suggests catastrophe, that these forts were besieged and burned in such furious, prolonged attacks that the very stones themselves liquefied. Yet this explanation feels incomplete. Many of these vitrified sections are found not just on the surface, but integrated deep within the walls, suggesting the fire was part of the construction process itself, not merely its destruction. If this was intentional, the implications are extraordinary. It would mean that certain ancient cultures possessed not just the capability to build with stone, but to fundamentally transmute it. They wielded a pyrotechnology of staggering scale, a deliberate application of heat so controlled and immense that it could alter the molecular structure of a fortress wall. The purpose remains debated. Some researchers propose that vitrification strengthened the ramparts, welding the stones into a single, monolithic mass that was harder to dismantle. Others suggest it was a symbolic act, a ritual of purification or consecration by fire, permanently sealing a pact or a boundary with the very essence of the earth made molten. The geographical spread of these sites from Scotland to France and beyond tells us this was not a one-time accident. It was a repeatable technique, a specialized piece of knowledge held by the Celtic or pre-Celtic peoples of Iron Age Europe. This shared knowledge of extreme heat application forms a distinct thread in our global tapestry. It challenges the quiet assumption that such high-temperature industry was the sole province of much later civilizations. Here, scattered on windswept hills, is evidence that the ancient master builders understood not just the weight and shape of stone, but its very transformation under the elemental force of fire. This mastery over materials, from melting stone to shaping the hardest granite, suggests a graduated understanding of the Earth's substance, a knowledge that may have been applied to an even more precise and enduring craft, the creation of artifacts that seem to defy the tools of their era. The artifacts of ancient precision are not confined to the silent weight of stone. In the quiet darkness of a Mediterranean shipwreck, a corroded lump of bronze and wood revealed a secret that rewrote our understanding of ancient intellect. Recovered off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera, this object, known as the Antikythera Mechanism, is a clockwork mystery from the deep. Scientific analysis dates it to around 100 years before the Common Era. For decades, its purpose was unknown, a cryptic puzzle of interlocking gears fused together by centuries of seawater. Then, using advanced imaging techniques, researchers peered inside. They did not find a simple tool. They found an ancient analog computer of staggering complexity. This device was designed to model the cosmos. By turning a hand crank, an operator could calculate the positions of the sun, the moon, and the 5 known planets. It predicted lunar phases and, most remarkably, the timing of solar and lunar eclipses. Its precision-cut bronze gears, some with teeth less than a millimeter wide, worked together in differential systems, a level of mechanical sophistication not seen again until the astronomical clocks of 18th century Europe. This was not a lucky prototype. It represents a highly evolved understanding of celestial mechanics, precision metallurgy, and complex gearing. A device this advanced does not spring from nowhere. It implies a lost lineage. There must have been workshops, textbooks, a theoretical framework, and generations of craftsmen and astronomers who refined this knowledge. The Antikythera Mechanism is a single, surviving whisper from a conversation about the universe that was far more technical than we ever imagined. Its existence forces a profound question. If such pockets of advanced engineering knowledge existed in the ancient world, capable of miniaturizing cosmic cycles into a handheld bronze device, what else were they capable of building? The micro-scale genius of interlocking gears suggests a parallel macro-scale genius. The same principles of precise calculation, of understanding cycles and ratios, of translating abstract theory into physical form, are the very principles required to align a pyramid to true north or to engineer an earthquake-proof wall. This device connects the intellectual world of the ancient Greek geometer to the practical world of the global master builder. It tells us that the knowledge to predict an eclipse with gears is kin to the knowledge that marks that same eclipse in stone across an ocean on a solstice-aligned platform. The mechanism is a key not just to predicting the heavens but to unlocking a new perspective on all the other mysteries. It suggests that the shared global knowledge we are tracing was not merely empirical, learned through trial and error. It was, in places, deeply theoretical, mathematical, and astonishingly precise. The desert holds drawings meant for the sky. Across the arid plains of southern Peru, the Nazca lines unfold in a silent gallery of impossible scale. These are not mere scratches on the earth, but geoglyphs, vast designs created by removing the dark surface stones to reveal the lighter soil beneath. The figures they depict are staggering in their complexity and size. A hummingbird with wings outstretched over 300 feet, a spider nearly 160 feet long, a condor with a wingspan that would dwarf a modern jetliner. Some of the geometric forms, like the immense trapezoids and spirals, stretch for over a mile in perfectly straight lines or precise curves. The sheer act of creation here is a monumental puzzle. How did the Nazca people between 2,000 and 1,500 years ago execute such precise, large-scale artwork without the ability to fly? The images only cohere when seen from a significant height, a perspective their makers presumably never had. This required a form of projective geometry, a method for transferring a small, detailed design onto a landscape canvas kilometers wide without distortion. The technical knowledge implied is profound, a mastery of surveying, measurement, and spatial planning that feels anachronistic. While the purpose of the lines is passionately debated, ranging from astronomical calendars to ritual pathways linked to water deities, the construction method itself is a clear, tangible fingerprint of advanced practical knowledge. And this fingerprint is not unique to Peru. In the deserts of Chile, the Atacama giant geoglyph stares skyward. In the American Southwest, the blithe intaglios in California depict giant human figures etched into the ground. Across the plains of England, the Uffington White Horse, a stylized equine figure carved into a chalk hill, dates back over 3,000 years. Each of these sites represents a culture deciding to make its mark not on a temple wall, but on the very skin of the earth itself, at a scale visible to the horizon or the heavens. This recurring tradition of landscape-scale art suggests a shared conceptual leap, a move from decorating architecture to manipulating geography. It points to a common understanding that the earth itself could be a canvas, and that the act of shaping it on such a grand scale held a power, whether for communicating with the gods, mapping the stars, or simply declaring a presence that would endure for millennia. This command of space, this ability to think and work in magnitudes that dwarf the human form, is another thread in our global tapestry. It reveals a mindset that saw the local landscape as part of a larger, ordered system, a perspective that may have been guided by a shared reverence for the patterns found in the night sky, patterns that demanded expression on a truly cosmic scale. The step pyramid is an idea that refused to stay in one place. From the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of Yucatan, and from the river valleys of Mesopotamia to the volcanic highlands of Indonesia, ancient architects repeatedly chose to build their most sacred monuments in the same distinct form, a series of ascending, squared tiers reaching for the sky. This is our 12th mystery, the global uniformity of the step pyramid, a pattern too specific and too widespread to be a simple accident of engineering. At Saqqara, the step pyramid of Djoser rises as a stack of 6 mastabas, a stone staircase for a pharaoh's ascent to the realm of the sun god Ra. A world away, the Maya built the towering castillo at Chichen Itza with its 4 sides of 91 steps each, a precise calendar in stone aligned to the equinox sun. In ancient Iraq, the Great Ziggurat of Ur was a massive mud brick temple platform, a holy mountain where priests communed with the gods. Even on the island of Java, the megalithic site of Gunung Padang presents itself as a massive terraced hillside, a stepped pyramid shaped by human hands millennia ago. The differences in size, material, and cultural context are obvious, yet the fundamental blueprint is unmistakably the same. Why would cultures with no known contact all gravitate toward this specific, complex form? The most straightforward explanation is functional. A stepped structure is inherently stable, an efficient way to build tall with simple materials. But if pure utility were the only driver, we would see far more variety, more experimentation with cones, cylinders, or simple mounds. The step pyramid's near monopoly on sacred high architecture suggests its power was symbolic as much as structural. Across these disparate cultures, the stepped form appears to have represented a cosmic mountain, the primordial hill from which creation sprang. It was a staircase to the heavens, a literal and spiritual conduit between the earthly realm and the domain of the gods. The act of climbing its tiers was a ritual journey, a symbolic ascent toward enlightenment or divine favor. This shared archetype points to something profound in the ancient human psyche, a collective intuition about how to physically manifest a connection to the cosmos. But could this intuition have been guided by more than just a common dream? The construction of these pyramids often involved more than just stacking blocks. They were frequently aligned to celestial events, their proportions governed by sacred geometry, their number of steps tied to astronomical cycles. This suggests the shared knowledge may not have been merely a vague spiritual concept, but a more formalized set of principles, a sacred architecture handbook of sorts, that specified the stepped form as the ideal vessel for housing divine energy and mapping the heavens onto the earth. Whether this handbook was carried by migrating priests, encoded in global myth, or emerged independently from a shared, deep understanding of the universe, the step pyramid stands as one of the strongest architectural arguments for a connected ancient world. It is a monument built not just from stone, but from a shared vision of humanity's place in the cosmos, a vision so compelling it was carved into landscapes across the globe. Sound was a sacred material as tangible as stone to the ancient master builders. Across the globe, they engineered their most important spaces not just for the eye, but for the ear, manipulating the very air within them to produce specific, powerful effects. This is the 13th mystery, the advanced and intentional acoustics of ancient sites, a clear fingerprint of sophisticated physics knowledge. Beneath the modern streets of Malta lies a subterranean labyrinth carved from solid limestone, the hypogeum of Hal Saflieni. This three-level complex, over 5,000 years old, is a marvel of architecture, but its true wonder is heard, not seen. One particular chamber, known as the Oracle Room, possesses an extraordinary acoustic property. A deep male voice speaking or chanting at a specific pitch causes the entire room to resonate, the sound vibrating through the stone in a way that can be felt physically. This resonance occurs at a frequency that some researchers suggest could affect brainwave patterns, potentially inducing states of heightened awareness or trance. The design appears deliberate, a sacred technology where architecture and ritual sound merge to facilitate a transcendental experience. Far across the Atlantic, another structure speaks in an animal tongue. When you stand at the base of the great Mayan pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza and clap your hands, the echo that returns is not a simple reverberation. It is a sharp, chirping sound that uncannily mimics the call of the revered Quetzal bird, a sacred symbol of the Maya. This is not an accident of stone. It is the result of the precise geometry of the staircase, each step acting as a sound diffractor that shapes the clap into a specific avian echo. The builders engineered a permanent connection between human action and a divine symbol in sound. In the sun-drenched hills of Greece, the open-air theaters at Epidaurus and elsewhere demonstrate a more public, but no less precise, acoustic mastery. The semicircular arrangement of stone seats and the design of the stage area act as a natural amplifier. A whisper from the center of the orchestra circle can be heard with perfect clarity in the very last row, hundreds of feet away without any electronic assistance. This was applied science, a deep understanding of how sound waves reflect and carry. What we see emerging from Malta to Mexico to Greece is a pattern of intentionality. These cultures were not merely building shelters or monuments, they were crafting instruments. They understood that space shapes sound, and that sound, in turn, can shape consciousness, ritual, and community. The widespread application of this knowledge, from subterranean resonance chambers to vast public auditoriums, suggests that the principles of acoustic engineering were part of that ancient, shared architectural lexicon. It reveals a holistic view of sacred space, where every sensory input was designed to guide the participant toward a specific experience, proving that the blueprint for these sites was written not only in geometry, but in the invisible physics of vibration itself. The silent, watchful faces of Rapa Nui hold a question of pure effort. Scattered across this remote volcanic island, the massive Moai statues stand as monuments to an obsession with scale. Carved from compressed volcanic tuff, hundreds of these figures were meticulously shaped, some reaching heights of over 30 feet and weights exceeding 80 tons. Their creation alone is a marvel, but the true enigma is their journey. Quarried from the slopes of the Raraku volcano, many of these colossi were then transported miles across the island's rugged, rolling terrain to be erected upon vast coastal platforms called ahu. For generations, the method was a complete mystery, fueling tales of lost magic or even extraterrestrial assistance. In recent years, compelling experiments have demonstrated a surprisingly elegant possibility. By using a system of ropes to rock a statue from side to side, teams have shown a Moai could be walked upright across the landscape, its curved base allowing it to pivot forward with each tug. This solution is mechanically beautiful, a clever application of physics that turns an inert monolith into a lumbering giant. Yet solving the how only deepens the mystery of the why. The social feat remains staggering. On a small, isolated island with limited resources, an entire society organized itself for generations around this single, all-consuming purpose. The investment in time, food, and communal labor is almost unimaginable by modern standards. This drive to move mountains, quite literally, to honor ancestors and assert a clan's presence speaks to a motivation that transcends simple utility. It is here we find the deeper connection. This same powerful imperative echoes across the ancient world. In Egypt, pharaohs commissioned colossal seated figures of themselves, carved from single blocks of quartzite and granite to project eternal power. On the Gulf Coast of Mexico, the Olmec civilization carved immense stone heads, each weighing many tons with distinct helmet-like features, likely representing powerful rulers. From the toppled giants of Nemrut Dogi in Turkey to the massive stone tiki figures of the Marquesas Islands, cultures separated by vast oceans all felt compelled to express their identity, their beliefs, and their connection to the past through the most permanent medium imaginable, stone shaped on a superhuman scale. This recurring pattern suggests something more profound than independent artistic trends. It points to a shared, almost instinctual, language of monumentality. The message was not subtle. To carve a figure larger than life, to move what seems unmovable, was to make a statement intended for eternity, a declaration of presence meant to outlast generations, spoken in a grammar of weight and endurance that every ancient culture, it seems, understood intuitively. This language of the colossal was one way to communicate across time, but another, more subtle language was whispered in the very proportions of sacred spaces, governed by a mathematical constant that nature itself seems to favor. Beneath the waves off the coast of western India, a city sleeps. According to ancient Sanskrit texts, the legendary city of Dwarka was the magnificent kingdom of the deity Krishna, a place of immense splendor and power. For centuries, these stories were considered myth, a poetic allegory. Then, marine archaeologists began to explore the seabed near the modern town of Dwarka. What they found was not a scattered collection of pottery, but the unmistakable layout of a planned urban settlement. They mapped massive stone blocks, geometric foundations, pillars, and a variety of artifacts that point to a sophisticated harbor city. Scientific dating suggests structures here could be over 3,000 years old, with some evidence hinting at even earlier origins. This is not a lone anomaly. Similar stories of great cities claimed by the sea echo around the world. The Sumerians wrote of a great flood sent by the gods. The Maya spoke of previous worlds destroyed by water. Countless cultures, from the Aboriginal peoples of Australia to the native tribes of the Pacific Northwest, preserve ancestral memories of a catastrophic deluge. The physical evidence of Dwarka, a real city submerged in the exact manner described by its own ancient texts, gives startling weight to these universal narratives. Scholars now widely recognize that these flood myths likely preserve a collective human memory of a real geological event. The rapid sea level rise at the end of the last ice age, when melting glaciers raised ocean levels by hundreds of feet over centuries, drowning coastal plains and settlements worldwide. This shared trauma, encoded in story and now corroborated by underwater ruins, forms our 15th mystery. It suggests ancient civilizations did not just share architectural ideas, they may have shared a foundational, cautionary experience. The knowledge of how to build great coastal cities came with the painful knowledge that the sea could reclaim them. This deep, generational memory of loss could have been a powerful catalyst, driving a shared imperative to build with permanence, to choose stone over wood, to align structures with celestial cycles that outlast earthly cataclysms, and to encode warnings for future generations in the very bedrock of their most enduring myths. The submerged foundations of Dwarka are more than an archaeological site. They are a physical anchor for a story told across the globe, a story that may have shaped the very character of ancient construction everywhere, born from the fear of watching a world vanish beneath the waves. Stone is not the only language of the ancients. They also spoke in the chemistry of creation. While the enduring image of ancient construction is one of massive blocks perfectly fitted, there exists a quieter, equally profound parallel tradition, the art of making stone itself. The 16th mystery lies in the global knowledge of cement and concrete in antiquity, a testament to a sophisticated understanding of chemistry and materials science that spanned continents. The Romans are rightly celebrated for their concrete, a mix of volcanic ash, lime, and seawater that has famously endured for millennia, even growing stronger in the marine environment. But this was not the beginning of the story. It was a later, brilliant chapter in a much older book. Long before Rome, the ancient Egyptians were expertly using gypsum-based mortars in their pyramid constructions, a binder that set quickly and firmly. On the island of Crete, the sophisticated Minoan civilization employed a complex asphaltic mastic, a waterproof adhesive, in their elaborate palace complexes at Knossos. These were not simple mud plasters. They were engineered solutions, the result of experimentation and deep familiarity with local geology. The most tantalizing evidence, however, comes from the joints themselves. Some researchers analyzing the seams between the colossal stones at sites like the Giza Plateau or in Peru have proposed a radical theory. They suggest that what we are looking at may not always be perfectly cut natural rock, but in some cases a form of cast stone, a geopolymer. This would be an artificial rock created by chemically activating and reforming natural minerals into a slurry that could be poured or packed into place, hardening into a seamless, monolithic mass. If substantiated, this idea would completely revolutionize our view of ancient capabilities. It would mean that alongside their mastery of cutting and moving stone, these cultures had also unlocked the secret of growing it, of synthesizing a building material that could mimic or even surpass nature's own. Whether or not the geopolymer theory gains full acceptance, the broader pattern is undeniable. From the lime plasters of Mesoamerica to the advanced mortars of the Indus Valley, cultures across the ancient world were engaged in a parallel global quest. They were all pursuing the same fundamental goal: to transcend the limitations of natural stone by inventing a superior binder, a material that could glue a world together. This widespread, varied experimentation points not to a single shared recipe, but to a shared intellectual pursuit. It suggests that the transfer of knowledge along ancient trade routes may have included not just architectural forms, but the very recipes for making the earth itself more malleable, more obedient to the will of the builder. This chemical thread in our tapestry reveals an ancient world that was not only carving mountains, but also alchemizing them, seeking the philosopher's stone of permanent construction. The mathematics of harmony was etched into the very bones of the ancient world. Our 17th mystery is not a tool or a technique, but a number, a proportion so persistent it seems woven into the fabric of reality itself. This is the golden ratio, approximately 1.618, often represented by the Greek letter phi. In nature, it governs the spiral of a nautilus shell, the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower, and the branching of trees. But this mathematical constant did not stay in the forest or the garden. It found its way into the most sacred spaces humanity could build. The Parthenon in Athens, that icon of classical perfection, is famously framed by rectangles that approximate the golden ratio in its facade and floor plan. The Great Pyramid of Giza's proportions, the relationship of its height to half its base perimeter, yields a figure remarkably close to pi, but also creates triangles that embody phi. Across the world, the intricate layouts of many ancient Hindu temples, like the Candarya Mahadeva, are designed using strict geometric principles called Vastu Purusha Mandala, which often incorporate this same harmonious ratio. Now, it is crucial to note that not every claimed appearance of the golden ratio in antiquity is definitive. Some may be the product of later interpretation or simple coincidence born from an intuitive search for pleasing proportions. Yet the pattern, especially in contexts explicitly dedicated to the divine, is too compelling to dismiss entirely. When a culture builds a house for its gods, every choice is loaded with meaning. The intentional use of this specific, complex ratio in such spaces suggests something profound, a shared recognition that this particular proportion was not just aesthetically pleasing but sacred. It was seen as a fingerprint of the Creator, a fundamental rule of cosmic order. This points to a deep, cross-cultural knowledge of what we now call sacred geometry, a belief that the universe is constructed according to perfect mathematical principles, and that humanity's highest calling is to reflect those principles back in stone and mortar. The appearance of the golden ratio in Egypt, Greece, and India is not merely an architectural curiosity. It is the signature of a shared philosophical framework, a silent consensus among builders separated by continents that to create a true bridge to the divine, one must first learn the silent language of numbers that the cosmos speaks. This mathematical thread connects the spiritual aspirations of disparate cultures, implying that the blueprint for the universe, and thus for its temples, was considered a single, discoverable text. The silent mathematics of sacred geometry finds its physical echo on a windswept coast in Brittany. At Karnak, thousands of prehistoric standing stones march across the landscape in eerie, precise rows. These are not random erratics dropped by glaciers. They are a deliberate, sprawling statement, with some alignments stretching for kilometers in nearly perfect parallel lines. Their purpose remains one of Europe's great enigmas, a silent question posed in granite. Were they a colossal astronomical calendar, a processional pathway for the dead, or a boundary marker for territories seen and unseen? While the answer eludes us, the intention is undeniable. This was an act of large-scale landscape engineering. This same impulse to draw straight lines across the Earth connects to a far more expansive and controversial idea, the concept of ley lines. This theory suggests that many ancient sacred sites, from stone circles to burial mounds to hilltop temples, are not placed randomly but are interconnected by invisible straight-line alignments that crisscross the globe. Mainstream scholarship often dismisses ley lines as modern pattern-seeking or pseudoscience, and it is true that connecting random points on a map can often create illusory lines. Yet, the undeniable physical evidence at places like Karnak, or the processional avenue leading to Stonehenge, or the dead straight lines of the Nazca Desert, forces a more nuanced consideration. It suggests that certain ancient cultures possessed a sophisticated skill we call geodesy, the science of accurately measuring and representing the Earth. They could survey over vast distances, mark true cardinal directions, and plan sites that related to each other across miles of terrain. This was not magic, it was applied knowledge, a form of landscape literacy. Whether these alignments were meant to channel some hypothesized Earth energy, as some mystics propose, or served a more practical purpose, is secondary to the profound implication. The ability to think and build on this geographic scale, to see a single hilltop not as an isolated place but as a point in a vast, invisible grid, hints at a coordinated, macro-level vision. It points to a possible shared methodology, a forgotten branch of ancient science concerned with the placement of sacred architecture within the living body of the Earth itself. This knowledge of alignment, of connecting point to point across the horizon, would have been a powerful tool for any culture, a way to weave their most important sites into a unified, meaningful tapestry. That tapestry, however, may have been designed not just to map the land, but to mirror a much older map, one found in the stars above. The stone gate at Tiwanaku is a library, not a doorway. Carved from a single 10-ton block of andesite, the Gate of the Sun stands as a testament to a civilization's obsession with tracking the heavens. Its surface is dominated by a central, radiating figure, often interpreted as a solar deity, but the true mystery lies in the intricate frieze that surrounds it. This is not simple decoration. It is a complex symbolic calendar, a stone record of time itself. Researchers studying the 48 squares flanking the central figure have proposed it represents a year of 290 days. This unusual count does not match our solar year, leading to theories it could be tracking the synodic cycle of Venus, a calendar for agricultural rites, or even a count tied to an ancient, forgotten lunar reckoning system. The precision required to create such a permanent, public record of celestial cycles speaks of a society with advanced astronomical knowledge and a deep need to synchronize human activity with the cosmos. This impulse to encode the sky into architecture is a powerful, recurring theme. We see it in the zodiac carved into the ceiling of an Egyptian temple, in the solstice markers built into a Mayan observatory, and in the star maps implied by the alignments of stone circles. The Gate of the Sun is a particularly stark example of this practice, a massive stone book left open for anyone who could read its language. It suggests that for these ancient cultures, understanding time was not an abstract science, it was a sacred duty, and the most important knowledge deserved the most permanent medium. The gate itself as an object also finds echoes elsewhere. The concept of a monolithic stela or a towering stone portal, inscribed with cosmic information, appears in various forms. Think of the massive stone slabs erected by the Maya, recording dynastic histories and astronomical events, or the carved pillars of ancient Mesopotamia that documented laws and celestial omens for all to see. This was a global architectural tradition of the Monumental Manifesto. By setting this knowledge in stone, these builders were doing more than recording data. They were attempting to make the fleeting cycles of the planets and stars as solid and enduring as the earth beneath their feet. It was an act of cosmic stewardship, a shared global understanding that to build for eternity, you must first learn to read the clockwork of the sky. A single stone can become a world in itself. This 20th mystery is the global tradition of the monolith, the conscious choice to build not with many blocks, but with one impossibly large stone. From the sun-baked plains of Ethiopia rises the obelisk of Axum, a towering granite needle over 70 feet tall, intricately carved to resemble a multi-story building. In the quarries of Aswan, Egypt, the unfinished obelisk lies still attached to the bedrock, a testament to ambition frozen in time. Had it been completed, it would have been the largest Egyptian obelisk ever erected, a single piece of stone weighing nearly 1,200 tons. In St. Petersburg, Russia, the bronze horseman statue of Peter the Great rests upon the Thunderstone, a granite pedestal so massive its transport in the 18th century was hailed as an engineering marvel. And within the sanctums of countless Hindu temples across India, the central object of worship is often a Shiva lingam, a polished, cylindrical monolith symbolizing the infinite, unmanifest form of the divine. The pattern is clear and cross-cultural. Why would societies go to such extraordinary lengths? The technical challenge was astronomical. Quarrying a monolith without fracturing it required an intimate knowledge of the stone's grain and fault lines. Moving it demanded the invention of entirely new methods of leverage and transport, often across miles of difficult terrain. Erecting it was a final, breathtaking act of balance and precision. The answer lies beyond mere function. A structure built from many stones speaks of assembly, of human collaboration, but a monolith speaks of unity, of wholeness, and of a direct, unbroken connection to the earth from which it was born. It was the ultimate symbol of permanence and power, a piece of the planet's bones lifted into the realm of the sacred. To shape a mountain into a single, perfect object was to perform a kind of alchemy, transforming the raw, chaotic substance of the world into a focused expression of devotion or authority. The widespread recurrence of this incredibly difficult practice suggests that this symbolic language, where size equaled significance and unity equaled divine connection, was a shared dialect among ancient cultures. It implies that the specialized knowledge required to work with such scale, from sonic quarrying techniques to complex pulley systems, was not independently reinvented each time, but was a prized and portable skill carried by guilds of master builders who understood that to move a mountain, even a small one, was to speak the most profound language of all. Water is the lifeblood of any civilization, and the ancient world's mastery over it reveals a genius as profound as any pyramid. Our 21st mystery flows through the sophisticated water management systems found across continents. In the arid heart of Persia, engineers carved subterranean aqueducts known as qanats, gently sloping tunnels that tapped into distant mountain aquifers and guided the precious water for miles underground, preventing evaporation in the desert sun. This was not a simple trench. It was a feat of precise surveying and gravity-fed engineering that sustained cities for millennia. Far to the east, the vast metropolis of Angkor Wat was interlaced with an intricate grid of canals, reservoirs, and moats that did more than just supply water. This hydraulic network managed the intense monsoon floods, irrigated vast rice paddies to support a massive population, and mirrored the cosmic ocean of Hindu mythology, blending practical engineering with sacred symbolism. Meanwhile, on the island of Crete, the Minoan palace of Knossos boasted a remarkably advanced plumbing system over 3,000 years ago. It featured terracotta pipes for fresh water and a sophisticated drainage system for waste, showcasing an early and profound concern for sanitation and public health within an urban environment. These systems, from Persia to Cambodia to Crete, share a common thread of deep, applied intelligence. They demonstrate that ancient engineers possessed a sophisticated grasp of hydraulic principles, understanding water pressure, gradient, filtration, and storage. They planned for both scarcity and surplus, for daily need and ceremonial purpose. The development of such complex water management in both arid deserts and tropical jungles points to a shared, critical understanding. Water was not just a resource to be found, but a force to be intelligently harnessed. This practical knowledge was arguably more vital to daily survival and societal growth than the construction of monuments. It was the invisible infrastructure that made grand civilizations possible. And like the principles of sacred geometry or megalithic construction, this cornerstone of engineering wisdom almost certainly traveled. The concepts of aquifer tapping, canal construction, and urban sanitation were technologies of direct, life-giving benefit. They would have been precious cargo on ancient trade routes, exchanged between migrating peoples, and adapted to local landscapes from one river valley to the next. The global footprint of advanced hydraulics suggests that the shared knowledge of our ancestors was not only about reaching for the stars, but about mastering the very element that made life on Earth possible. The Earth itself became a sanctuary, hollowed out by hands that understood safety lay not only in height but in depth. Beneath the sunlit monuments, a shadow world of tunnels and chambers stretches across continents, a hidden mirror to the grandeur above. In the surreal landscape of Cappadocia, Turkey, entire cities were carved into the soft volcanic rock. Derinkuyu is the most famous, a labyrinth descending over 200 feet, capable of sheltering thousands. This was no haphazard burrow. It was a meticulously planned underground metropolis, complete with ventilation shafts that reached the surface for fresh air, wells for water, stables, chapels, and massive stone doors that could seal entire sections from the inside. It was a refuge designed for long-term survival, a testament to communities that knew how to vanish into the ground when danger arrived. Far to the west, across the rolling hills of Scotland and Ireland, ancient peoples built souterrains. These are stone-lined underground passages, often associated with Iron Age settlements. Their purpose is debated, perhaps for storage to preserve food in a cool, stable environment, or for ritual, creating a liminal space between the world of the living and the realm of spirits. The engineering challenge here was different, involving the careful placement of massive capstones to create stable, dry galleries without collapse. Then we turn to Egypt, where rumors and radar scans suggest a vast, unexplored network of tunnels and chambers may lie beneath the sands of the Giza Plateau, potentially connecting the Great Pyramids and the Sphinx in a subterranean web. Whether these are natural fissures adapted by human hands or entirely artificial constructs remains one of archaeology's great pending discoveries. The common thread is a profound geological intelligence. To build downward safely requires an intimate knowledge of soil composition, load-bearing principles, and hydrogeology to avoid flooding. It demands solutions for airflow and structural support that are every bit as sophisticated as those for a towering pyramid. This global impulse to go underground speaks to a shared duality in the ancient mindset. If the step pyramid was a staircase to the heavens, then the subterranean complex was a passage to the chthonic realm, the underworld, a place of primordial power, ancestors, and regeneration. But it was also intensely practical. In a world of climatic shifts and conflict, the Earth provided the ultimate insulation and protection. The widespread knowledge of how to build stable, livable spaces beneath the surface suggests this, too, was a critical chapter in the Shared Architectural Handbook, a set of survival principles for preserving community and culture when the world above grew perilous. It completes the ancient builder's vision, mastering both the zenith and the nadir, the sky above and the foundation below. A serpent slithers silently across the stones of the world. This powerful symbol, coiled around pillars, etched into walls, or shaped from the earth itself, forms our 23rd mystery, the recurring motif of the serpent in monumental architecture. It is far more than an artistic choice. It is a foundational idea carved into the blueprint of sacred sites. In the jungles of Yucatan, the Pyramid of Kukulkan is a stone embodiment of this concept. During the equinoxes, the play of light and shadow creates the illusion of a feathered serpent slithering down the staircase, a breathtaking merger of celestial timing, architectural form, and deep mythology. Across the ocean, in the river valleys of North America, ancient peoples sculpted the landscape into enormous earthen effigies, like the Great Serpent Mound in Ohio, its sinuous body winding for over a quarter-mile, aligning with the summer solstice sunset. This was not a small token, but a transformation of the very earth into a symbol. In the temples of India and Southeast Asia, stone serpents known as Nagas flank stairways and gateways, acting as divine protectors and symbols of wisdom and fertility. Even in the defensive walls of some ancient fortifications, we see a serpentine curvature, a design that may have been intended to confuse attackers while channeling a more primal, protective energy. The connection is unmistakable. Cultures that could never have met all wove the same creature into the fabric of their most important places. Why the serpent? Its symbolism is rich and nearly universal. It represents the cyclical nature of time, shedding its skin to be reborn. It is a creature of both the earth and the underworld, a bridge between realms. It often embodies wisdom, healing, and sometimes a raw, untamed power. By integrating this potent symbol directly into their architecture, these builders were doing something profound. They were not just building structures, they were building stories. They were encoding their cosmology, their understanding of life, death, and renewal into the permanent landscape. The alignment of these serpent forms with astronomical events like solstices and equinoxes deepens the connection. It ties the mythic creature to the great cycles of the cosmos, suggesting the serpent was seen as a force that governed or mirrored those celestial patterns. This widespread practice points to a shared mythological and cosmological framework that directly guided the ancient master builder's hand. It suggests that before the first stone was laid, there was a shared story, a shared understanding of the forces that animated the world. The serpent in the stone is a silent testament to that story, a narrative thread that connects a pyramid in Mexico to a mound in Ohio to a temple in Cambodia, proving that the language of ancient construction was spoken not only in angles and alignments, but in the universal symbols of the human imagination. The world was not built at random. A profound order was etched into the placement of every sacred stone, a silent alignment to the grand machinery of the cosmos. This 24th mystery is the near-universal dedication to orienting monuments with the cardinal points and the solstices. From the Great Pyramid's lock on true north to the precise equinox alignment of Angkor Wat's central tower, and from the solstice sunrise framed by Stonehenge to the carefully oriented temples of ancient China, this was a global architectural commandment. It was not a vague preference for symmetry. It was a deliberate, technically demanding act that required generations of patient sky watchers meticulously tracking the slow drift of sunrises and sunsets, the turning of stars, to pinpoint those four sacred directions and the pivotal days of the solar year. The effort invested speaks to its supreme importance. Why go to such extraordinary lengths? The alignment was a form of sacred anchoring. by fixing a temple to true east, the direction of rebirth, or to the solstice sun, the moment of the sun's annual triumph or retreat. These builders were physically tethering their human realm to the perceived eternal order of the universe. The structure became a conduit, a permanent point of contact between the cyclical, predictable heavens and the fleeting, chaotic earth. It was a way of importing cosmic stability into the human domain, of ensuring that the community's rituals, agriculture, and very sense of time were harmonized with the greatest power they knew. This shared, fundamental principle across all continents suggests something more than independent stargazing. It points to a globally recognized truth about existence, that humanity's place was not separate from the cosmos, but woven into its fabric. The orientation of a pyramid's corner or a temple's doorway was the first and most critical line in a silent prayer, written not in words but in geometry and light, declaring that here, at this exact point, heaven and earth were forever joined. The most honest blueprint of ancient engineering is not found in the finished masterpiece, but in the abandoned project. Scattered across the world are the silent workshops of history, places where the work stopped, leaving the process itself exposed for us to study. The 25th and final mystery lies in these unfinished megaliths, the frozen moments that reveal a common technological heartbeat pulsing across the globe. At the granite quarries of Aswan in Egypt, the unfinished obelisk remains partially attached to the bedrock, a colossal finger of stone that cracked and was left behind. Its surface is a textbook of technique, marked with the channels where workers pounded stone balls to separate it from the earth, and the empty slots where they would have inserted wooden wedges. Those wedges, when soaked with water, would swell with immense controlled force, splitting the granite along a precise line. This was not brute strength, it was applied physics, a deep understanding of material properties. Half a world away, in the quarry at Baalbek, the even larger stone of the pregnant woman tells a similar story. The tool marks around its base, the method of undercutting it from the bedrock, the clear evidence of a planned extraction that was never completed, all speak a familiar language. It is the language of leverage, of controlled fracture, of patient, incremental mastery over the stone. These sites, and others like them from Ollantaytambo in Peru to ancient quarries in Japan, provide a unique snapshot. They show us not the myth but the method. They reveal the common toolkit. We see the same use of water and wood for splitting, the same strategic placement of lever holes to pivot a block, the same practice of carving a statue or column in situ before attempting the perilous task of moving it. Even the errors are instructive. A misplaced wedge channel, a hidden flaw in the stone that caused a catastrophic crack. These so-called failures are priceless. They show a process of trial and error, of empirical learning that was hard-won. This is perhaps the most compelling evidence for a shared global knowledge because it exists at the level of pure craft. While the grand cosmological theories behind a pyramid or a temple might have differed from culture to culture, the practical, hands-on science of moving a 100-ton block of granite did not. That knowledge was empirical, repeatable, and transferable. It was the kind of information that a master mason would teach his apprentices, a set of rules that could travel along trade routes with migrating builders. The unfinished stones are their own testament. They tell us that the true connection between these ancient cultures was not necessarily a single lost civilization, but something equally profound, a shared and slowly accumulated library of practical engineering solutions. This was a knowledge born from direct conversation with the material world, a language of stone, water, wood, and leverage that, once discovered, became humanity's common inheritance, whispered from one generation of builders to the next across mountains and millennia. 25 distinct mysteries, yet a single, undeniable pattern emerges from the dust. Separately, each enigma can be rationalized, explained away as an isolated feat of genius or a curious coincidence. But when we lay them side by side, a different picture comes into focus. The identical fingerprints are everywhere, from the way they shaped stone to the way they read the stars. This is no longer a collection of random dots on a map. This is a constellation. The sheer volume and specificity of these parallels strain the comfortable explanation of pure, independent invention. It is one thing for two cultures to independently discover the lever. It is another for a dozen cultures, separated by oceans, to independently invent the same incredibly difficult method of fitting multi-angled stone blocks without mortar, or to encode the same complex solar alignment into their grandest temples, or to weave the same serpent symbol into the very bones of their sacred architecture. The odds begin to feel astronomical. This does not mean we must leap to a single mythical source, a lost Atlantis that gifted its blueprints to the world. The truth is likely far more nuanced and far more human. It points to a world that was never truly silent. It suggests a complex, intermittent web of contact, a slow, patient diffusion of ideas across millennia. Knowledge could have traveled along ancient trade routes that stretched further than we dare to assume, carried by sailors, merchants, and migrating clans. Master builders themselves may have been itinerant, their skills a prized commodity, hired by kings across continents to raise monuments that whispered the same architectural language. Consider also the possibility of a shared ancestral layer, a deep, common well of understanding from humanity's remote past. Before the great diasporas that scattered peoples across the globe, there may have existed a foundational toolkit of survival and symbolism, a primordial recognition of celestial cycles and geometric harmony that each departing group carried with them, adapting it to new lands over countless generations. This is not a diminishment of any culture's brilliance. The Maya were no less ingenious, the Egyptians no less sophisticated. Instead, it reframes their achievements as part of a grand, collaborative project across time. It suggests that human ingenuity has always been a conversation, not a series of monologues. A brilliant solution to moving megaliths, once discovered, would have been a secret too valuable to keep, a technique that would ripple outward, changing shape but not essence from one river valley to the next. What we are witnessing in these 25 mysteries is the physical evidence of that ancient conversation, a dialogue in stone and alignment that spanned the planet. The walls of Sacsayhuamán speak to the foundations of Masonry. The step pyramid at Saqqara echoes in the jungles of Chichen Itza. The acoustic chamber in Malta resonates with the engineered bird call in Mexico. They are not copies but variations on a theme, local dialects of a global architectural language. This interconnected perspective does not rewrite history, but it deepens its color and expands its scale. It asks us to see our ancestors not as isolated tribes staring at their own campfires, but as nodes in a vast, slow-moving network, connected by shared questions about the cosmos, shared solutions for survival, and a shared, unshakable drive to build meaning into the very substance of the earth. The tapestry of our past, it seems, was woven with threads that reached across continents, threads we are only now beginning to trace with our fingers. The stones have spoken, and their message is one of profound connection. Our journey through these 25 ancient construction mysteries reveals a world far more intriguing and intertwined than standard histories often portray. From the Andean highlands to the plains of Asia, from the silent cities beneath the waves to the vast glyphs on desert plains, the evidence compels a quiet revolution in perspective. The architectural echoes are too precise, the symbolic repetitions too specific, to be dismissed as mere coincidence, while countless questions remain unanswered and the full story may never be fully recovered. The pattern itself is undeniable. It asks us to reconsider the familiar narrative of human development, a story painted in isolated strokes of genius. Perhaps our ancestors were not solitary tribes staring only at their own campfires, but participants in a vast, if intermittent, conversation. This was a slow exchange of ideas, technologies, and spiritual concepts that traveled on the winds of migration, along forgotten sea routes, and in the minds of itinerant master builders. The true enduring mystery, then, may not be solely how they built these wonders with the tools we assume they had. The deeper question is what they collectively understood about the world, its cycles, and humanity's place within it, knowledge that seems to have faded from our common memory. These monuments stand not as ruins of separation, but as invitations. They ask us to keep questioning, to look beyond borders drawn on modern maps, and to connect the dots of our deep past with an open mind. The blueprint for a more connected human story is etched in the very stones we have walked past for centuries. If this exploration into our shared legacy has sparked your curiosity, please consider subscribing for more deep dives into history's greatest enigmas. We would love to hear your perspective, so share which of these 25 mysteries intrigues you most in the comments below.